Good morning, everybody. Welcome to High Point Market. Welcome to, I guess, officially day 3. We opened last Thursday, so it can be a long week, but a fun week. So welcome to Universal. My name is Neil McKenzie. I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing here at Universal, and you guys are in the Learning Center. This is a space that we developed when we moved into our building, and we host a number of educational events throughout market here. This particular market, we have 16 events in total, so we have 3 more today. We do record all of these events, so if you miss anything that you've signed up for, you are able to get those about a week afterwards. We send those out to you, and you can watch those on your own time. If you've never been to our space, welcome. There's a ton to see. We have a new collection on floor 3 with Coastal Living Magazine called Weekender, which we highly encourage you to check out. On floor 2, we have some great in-stock looks with Miranda Kerr Home and Modern Farmhouse. And then on the ground floor, which is what we're on here, you have our special order upholstery offering, which is currently shipping out of Conover in 6 to 8 weeks. So please be sure to check those out. And we also have downstairs the Designer's Lounge, which has a lot of fun activations happening throughout the week in there. There's a beauty bar if you want a hair touch-up, so be sure to check that out. There's some champagne tasting, so a lot of fun things happening. If you want to experience any of it, just please check in at the front desk, and they'll be happy to get you on your way. Also, I just want to point out that we do tag everything in the showroom to make it easy for you guys to shop. So we actually have these scanners that allow you to go around, build wish lists, and then when you check out of the building, you get an email with everything that you scan. So it's a great way of just kind of recapping all the things that you want to buy, which we like. So we have a great panel that Caitlin Peterson, editor-in-chief from Business of Home, is going to host. And we do a lot of work with Business of Home, one of our favorite magazines. Caitlin's one of our favorite people in the industry. And I'm going to let her kick it off with the panel and lead this conversation. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil, so much. Thank you to Universal for having us here today. Thank you to all of us for joining. I want to second what Neil said about that Coastal Living Weekender collection. I saw it yesterday, and it is beautiful. So don't leave without heading upstairs to see it. I am so lucky to be here today talking about art with 4 amazing women and entrepreneurs and creatives working in all corners of the design industry, kind of across that arc of, creation to installation of fine art. I want to introduce everybody really quickly, but then I'm hoping you'll each go through and tell us a little bit about where your work is on that journey from creation to installation, just to kind of give us the groundwork for where you're coming from as we have this conversation. We've got Allison Monson, Christine Wexler, Bets Miller, and Eleanor Scott Davis with us. Eleanor, you have the unlucky opportunity of sitting next to me, so you get to go first.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work in your business?
My name is Eleanor Scott Davis, and I am an artist based right down the road in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I am the first stage of creation. I create in my sunny home studio in Raleigh.
Can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Sure. My work is, I would describe as happy, joyful, colorful. I paint abstracts, still life, and landscapes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bets Miller, and I'm a retail owner and interior designer based in Rye, New York. For the last 12 years, I've owned a store called Nest Inspired Home, which just this week announced that it is closing and transitioning to become Finch & Co. with a location in Rye and in Bluffton, South Carolina, with a new business partner. And I am the intermediary between these wonderful talents and the consumer, and trying to find a way to bring them. And when you meet Christine, you'll understand that she's my secret weapon, and working with them to really bring art into people's homes.
Hi, hello, good morning. I'm Christine Wexler. I'm here today representing Romanoff Elements. We have an amazing opportunity to work with many artists, all different mediums, and to work with interior designers like Bets, and really start from the beginning is where we love to be, through the creative process with the client, helping select different artworks, different styles, getting to know the client, the color scheme in the palette for the new home, for the new room. So it's a really fun process to kind of connect at the beginning, get to know not only the designer, build those relationships, but then also be in touch with the client so that you know what their likes are, so that then we can suggest different art to help build that art plan. And definitely my message today is, start that from the very beginning, because it's really helps when you reach the final finish. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Allison Monson. I'm based in Reading, Connecticut. I'm a fine art photographer, and my work very similarly. I like to say I like to make people happy. I shoot everything. I travel the world to photograph it, and I work primarily with designers, with art consultants, and to the trade showrooms.
Amazing. Well, I want to set the stage here. This is going to be a really obvious thing to say, but art's an essential part of the home. And I think we can all agree on that. But what is it that makes it so essential? What does it bring to a room? And for each of you, what is a room without art missing? Why is the conversation we're having today about getting art right in the interior so important?
Art is always the last thing that goes up, and very often, unfortunately, the last thing that gets specified, the last thing in the budget. But it's what ties the whole room together. Very often designers want the room to look a certain way, and the art will tie that all in. But then very often, you have your consumer who the art needs to speak to them, and it needs to make them happy. And it doesn't necessarily have to be matchy, but it works in the room. So
I'd like to. So I agree with all of that, because if you think about, like, the designer really helps build that color palette, so the client feels comfortable in the home. That's the colors that speak to them. But then the art is really their personal expression. And sometimes it is hard. You have to sort of help the client along to see what type of art they do love, but whether it makes them feel, at peace or happy or calm, it is definitely really essential. Because if you have a room, the couch isn't really giving that to you. It might give you a great nap, but it's not giving you that feeling of this, I remember this moment or this time or this, these colors, are making my day start off right. So it adds that personal vibe that I think without it, it's the home is missing something. It's blank walls.
I'll speak to something you said. I really feel like there's a few things that make a house a home. I mean, dogs, food, art. And I really feel like art is a living thing. And it's one of the things in your home that will evolve with you. And as you grow and as you change, I think that you will begin to see different things in a piece of art. And that's something that a piece of furniture can't do, I'm sorry to say. But art really can do that. It is the only thing that truly grows with you.
As the artist in the room, yeah. I would absolutely the same thing agree. But actually, when I start my design boards for a room, the art is on the design board. So that's really an important piece for me. No, but that I do think, and it may be something they already have, or maybe something that we're going to suggest. It may not be the final piece we end up with, but I like to find out from them where they're going. And I think a lot of times when you're working with a client, it's really important to see, and whether you can hopefully be in their home, or if not with pictures, see what art they have. And that will give you a lot of indication about what they're feeling, about what that speaks to them and their personality. And Caitlin wrote a great article about that this morning, about personality and how that will drive design decisions, and working with your clients with that. So read that if you haven't. But that's something that's really important for me. And I think that's what we've really worked well together about, is really bringing them on very early on in the design process, and making sure that art is in the budget. It's in the line for them, because, you can spend what you want on the furnishings, but if you don't have the art at the end of the day, the room's not done.
I want to kind of follow up on that a little bit. Are clients ready to talk about art at the beginning of the project? Or is there pressure from a client to say, like, oh, we'll think about that later? And how do you
It can
sort
go
of say
both
this is
ways.
essential now?
It can go both ways, but we tell them that, we always tell people, you don't have to spend all of the money at once, but you have to have a plan of where you're going. So you may not be willing, and what I also love about what we've been able to do together with Romanoff and with Allison and some of the other artists who are here, Annie and Amy, we're able to find things in certain budgets. It doesn't have to be expensive art. It just has to be something that they love, right? There's art at all different price points. It doesn't have to be an investment piece of art. And some people fortunately have the ability to do that, but a lot of people don't. And that's okay. It still has to be something that finishes the room and is part of the overall design.
I know the three of you have worked together some, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about sort of that relationship and how you're really helping the consumer get to the piece, the client get to the piece that's going to feel great to them at the end of the project.
obviously it could be very intimidating, right? Especially if they're not already an art collector or they have art, they're new to that. But really what we like to do, at Romanoff Elements is really try to educate, present many suggestions and actually like build relationships with the artists, like to be able to do studio visits, to meet the artists in person. Then all of a sudden it becomes very personal. And if they, if someone loves Allison's work, or another artist's work, then they have this immediate connection. When it's hanging on their wall, it means more than, if you were just to select something and hang it and the designer say, oh, well, this goes well in the room and, here you go. So that's one way that we really try to, and again, like, there's an art budget, all different sizes. So that's another thing, is to really educate the client in, we can fit your budget. We can bring art, that works for that. And then present all different mediums. But again, I think it's the relationship building. And so we love to build the relationships with the designers, but then also it's so important for us that we are very proud to have a catalog of artists that we could say to Allison, hey, could you meet? Can you come by? Can you see this space? And it just really right? Would you agree?
And I'll add to the relationships. One of my favorite things to do is to meet the client, because when you connect to the art, it's one thing, but when you connect to the artist and you hear like why they took the photo, where they took the photo, what they were thinking, what they were hoping to show, then there's a real connection. And I think that's really important, is it's a conversation. I don't sell from my website for that very reason, because I like having that conversation, whether it be with an art consultant, a retail store, and a designer. But really, when it gets to the client part, that's really where the connection needs to be made.
That's great. I love it. So you want to meet somebody before you let a piece go.
There are many times where I don't.
Yeah.
Usually there's some sort of trail of email if I'm not talking to them. But for the most part, I'm talking to people. I sell direct to the consumer as well. And very often when that happens, I can Zoom with them. They can show me where the art's going. I personally offer complimentary mock-ups so that they send me a photo of the space, because designers can visualize, but we all know our clients very often cannot. And that really helps the client. But again, it's more about that conversation with them, just getting to know them, getting to know what the house is all about, and how it flows, as not just from a furniture and design point of view, but like how they work as a family.
Eleanor, for you, how do you want to connect with clients, or what do you want that relationship to be when someone is, procuring your work?
I definitely agree with Allison that art is so much more meaningful when you understand the hands that made it.
Yeah.
And in the age of Instagram, I think that that's the most amazing thing that it's done for artists. I think that a lot of artists shy away from sharing their families and their life on their pages, but that's something that I really feel like has been a valuable tool in my business, because I think it's so much more valuable, like when people can see my girls in the studio and see that the art was created with joy and chaos and all the family life. And it's like so funny how some people will connect with me over the strangest things. They'll be like, oh, I really want this painting because my middle child reminds me of Julia, and that's my middle child. And I'm like, people will call my children by name. And I just think it's so interesting to be able to have that one-on-one connection.
What is your relationship to the people who end up living with your work?
So I am one of the few artists that actually like the business side of the art as much as I like creating it. And so I sell right now all on my own.
Okay.
So I am the only person between me and the sale. So I really get to talk to the client to understand where it's going. There's no middleman. And I think that that's been a valuable tool for me. And it's not for every artist, I will say that. But so I really have a one-on-one connection with everybody who brings my art into their home.
What is the relationship you like having with a designer who's working with the client?
I love working with designers, because I know that if I'm working with a designer, that my piece of art is going to be in a beautiful room. And there's nothing better than seeing your art in a beautiful room. I mean, it is just the biggest thrill to see it in a beautiful space and to know it's going to live in a place that is loved and cared for. But I think designers have a great eye. And I think the designers I've worked with push their clients a little bit more. to go a little bit not so matchy. I think that that's important for a room. I think designers are the best at recognizing scale. I think that that's really the value that designers add.
As I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of working with clients, what are, if you have a client who does want to get to know art better, who does want to think about investing, how are you talking to them about sort of the landscape of options and price points available to
Well,
them?
that's when I call in Romanoff Elements for sure. No,
Then maybe that's
yeah,
for both
that's
of you,
probably a
but
better
yeah.
question for. No, I do think that some people, and especially in New York where we're based,
Mm-hmm.
there are people who have made, and you'll walk into a home and they'll have spectacular pieces of art,
Yeah.
and they're looking to maybe just do another iteration of a room. So they've already worked with the designer. You're coming in and doing that. We have a lot of young families where that's their first investment and they want to invest in art. And sometimes you have to say it doesn't. They will sometimes say, well, it needs to be, I'm looking in this price point. You don't need to be looking in a price point. You need to be looking for the art, right? You're looking for the piece that's going to speak to your family, not making a long-term investment. Because I said, are you really going to sell that piece? Are you investing it because you think you're going to flip it down the road? Or do you buying it because you love it and it brings, like you said, joy and happiness to your home? So that's something.
Is that a conversation is that a mindset you have to kind of walk, deconstruct for people often?
Not really. We still have a lot of young families, so
Yeah.
the art is sort of a stretch for them. But we just try to say that it's so important as you're designing the room. You have to be thinking it's not complete without it.
Yeah. Christine, when you're, showing people this array of options, what is it important to bring the client to a gallery, to bring them, where would you suggest that like clients start to look, or how do you sort of help show them the different, the art world is big and complicated and
Yeah,
intimidating.
Of course.
How do you start to unlock that for a client?
Definitely. Luckily right now, like Eleanor said, like Instagram has definitely opened up the world to people. So whether, they could be on vacation and they're scrolling and they're looking at things and they'll say, I saw this, I like this. And so you can start to kind of pick up on what, they're attracted to in a way. I would say to any artist or any, client or any person that I meet when they want to start to kind of educate themselves is definitely go walk a fair. You get to see so much art. There's so many great fairs that are, in so many different levels where you can afford it. You can go in and you don't have to be sticker shocked to the point of like, we'll never be able to afford something like this. And then there are art fairs where you can meet, the artists, in person, which is great, as well. Definitely taking trips to galleries, but personally what we would like to do is, usually we meet, we get to talk a little bit more, we get to see a few things they like, and then I send, some examples like, let's look at this, let's talk about this. And we do that on Zoom, we do that in person. And then I usually go in walking the space. I think it's really important to actually be in the home that you're, of the client and see the different walls, then you can make suggestions. And then in that, do some mock-ups like Allison was saying. We love to do mock-ups. It's really important because it really helps that visual start to come together. And, you can even, I think it opens up a wide thing because then you can also say, they love this, but what we can meet with the artist and make it commissioned, and change the coloring and do different things. And then it starts to build that real personal connection to art. But I'm a big fan of the fairs just for educating. I walk the fairs all the time. I actually, we love to meet new artists, but I also love to see what's happening, what's out there. So
How do you work with a client who doesn't know what they like? I talked to someone the other day who had a client and they said, well, what kind of art do they like? And they're like, well, we really like Van Gogh's Starry Night. And the designer was like,
yeah,
That's not happening.
yeah,
well, not only not happening, but
Yeah.
like, is that even helpful?
Right.
How do you
Right.
start to help people
yeah,
discover what their tastes and preferences are?
yeah.
Well, I think that Romanoff does an amazing job for our clients. Anyways, we will sit down and meet with someone, and Carol, who's unfortunately not here today, has a great portfolio and so incredibly organized on her computer with photos. And she can start. It's like you're talking about the personality test. She starts showing you photos, and she can fine tune from there. It's like the Rorschach inkblot, where she starts says, "Do you see this? You see that?" And then all of a sudden, she's taking you down a trail, and you're looking at one artist, and then she opens up another folder, and she kind of really fine tunes down to something like that's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
And from there, we then can work with the artist to commission and find something that works. They may see something that's already sold, but a lot of the artists are very open about, taking a look at recreating something in a similar vein, another color set or something. So that helps.
And I think,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I think that's really important because especially when you're face to face or Zooming and you're sharing your screen, you know, the client may think they like this, but when you're able to show them, like I have a real huge body of work, when you're able to show them this and then all of a sudden they're like, but what's that? And they don't
Yeah.
realize like, that's what I want. Like they think they want this. And then they're able to see all these other images and they go, that's what I want, you know?
Right.
So I think that's really important
Yeah.
to really dive deep.
And it's even just like sharing websites. Lots of times, if I'm doing a meeting, I'll pull up several artists' Instagrams and show some things. But like Allison's website, you know, is even, you know, if they're like, well, we love blue, we want blue, I can go on and show so many different, you know, things in that category. But I think most people say they may not know what they like about art, but they really do. 'Cause the second they see something, they know
Yeah.
what hits them
Is it
and
just
what
not
doesn't.
having the
Yeah,
language or not
yes.
having sort of the visual vocabulary to say it?
You just have to get them over that little hump that no, you actually have a taste. You have, you know, you are interested in certain art forms. Because some people say, well, I don't like photography. Okay, so then you do know you'd rather see
Yeah.
a painting or a you know, and you kind of go through it that way. It quickly develops, I think. And I think it's because as long as we make them comfortable feeling like it's okay
Yeah.
to be vulnerable to say, I know a Van Gogh, but I don't know any other artists. But
Right.
then all of a sudden it's like, well, you have likes. Yeah. So
I'll say one thing, and this is coming not from an artist perspective, but in addition to being artist, I also collect a lot of art. I mean, every artist I know would spend every penny they had that they made on art. I'm sure Allison probably feels the same way. But I think it's important to encourage collectors to diversify their collection. At one point, a couple of years ago, my husband looked around and he was like, all we have is landscapes and abstracts. And I said, you're absolutely right. And so I'm like, let's start to try and research a figurative artist and add that. And I think that they can all be cohesive and all work well together. But I think that having the mix, having all the elements, a little bit of sculpture, something with texture, landscape, abstract, figurative, portraiture, I think that it's in the mix and in the diversity of your collection that really makes each individual piece sing.
That's great. Christine, you mentioned commissions. And so I wanted to talk to you about that, but I also wanted to talk to the artists here about that. How, I say, Christine, this is going to be a multi-pronged question, but how does that work for you? And how, as an artist, do you like to work to customize something for a client?
well, I'll start it since we kind of start the process with the artist. You know, and even the word commission could sound a little intimidating.
That sounds terrifying.
Like, oh my God, it's going to be so expensive. This is going to be personally made. But then again, you
There's
have
also
your,
the
it's
unknown
like
in
your
it.
hand-
I'm
yeah,
saying yes to a thing I can't imagine.
to understanding it. So I think it's immediately, again, you know, the catalog that we carry of artists, we have personal relationships with all of the artists. So we can quickly speak to the artists themselves and be like, oh, you would love Allison, you know, this is what she does, or, you know, and it really starts to kind of become a conversation. And again, thanks to Instagram and videos and things like that, we can show a process, you know, and share it where they'd be like I'm doing a client right now in Palm Beach, and it's exactly that. I showed her a bunch of things. I explained that, you know, she could, you know, see different, you know, we could do different colorings. We can tailor it to the space. And now very quickly, that's exactly what they're doing. Because then it becomes their wall, their art. It does become that conversation piece in the room that they can say, well, yeah, we worked with the artist. We selected these, you know, the color patterns. So it's all in the approach, I think. So it sounds really scary in the beginning, or even as a photographer to say like, you know, can you go out and shoot this particular area? It brings the client into the process, the creative process. And I think that's a good thing.
Well, I'll shoot myself in the foot because I take a lot of commissions. It's probably 50% of my
Okay.
work. But I would encourage people not to commission things. I think that if you can find something that the artist creates honestly without having to be commissioned, that is gonna, now I'm not gonna say it's gonna be better because I stand behind every commission I make, but it is sometimes like painting with somebody else in my head. So if you do want to commission something, the reason that you would commission me to do something is because you need a very specific size, But I would encourage you, if you do want to commission a painting, to study the artist for a year, find out what it is you like in different works. I think that studying the artist is the best way to have a successful commission, and it can be really successful. And I think the collaboration is a lot of fun, and it gives me a lot of insight into what people are looking for and what speaks to other people. And I think it really makes my work grow when I take commissions, because it's like a one-on-one conversation. But I would encourage you to really have a lot of knowledge about the artist and the artist's work before you take that plunge into commissions.
I have like 8 more questions.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
what is it?
Yeah.
How does it change? You know, you have, if you're working on a commission, you have a brief, you know how what size they want, you know, maybe what colors they want, you know, what they like or don't like about maybe your body of work. How does that make the creative process feel different in the moment?
It makes it stressful.
Yeah.
And it makes it, and I'm not saying that the work is any less strong in the end, but I will say commissions, I mean, I charge more because they take me twice as much time, because it's less of a go in and intuitive, and it's more of a study and try and figure out what when I have someone commission a painting, I say, please send me 3 examples of my work that you're attracted to and let me know why. And I try and take those 3 paintings and those 3 elements that they were attracted to and meld them all together. And that's hard to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, I always allow clients to make as many changes as they want. And it's at some point I've gotten to with people to where I'm like, okay, feels like this is not my work anymore. And I think we either need to refund the deposit and scratch it. This has happened twice. Or we need to just stop and leave it as it is, because this is where it feels honest to me. And in the end, I'm signing my name on the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 100% very, very true. I try to say to clients, please get to the point, just like what you're saying. So everything you're saying it's great. And you still have to let the artist create. You cannot restrain their creative process. And that does become an issue with the commission sometimes.
So it's a little bit different for me.
Yeah.
I have kind of 2 different ways that I do commissioned work. My background is actually interior design. That's what I went to school for. So I really understand the design process. And so I understand that the designer very often wants to make the work match on some level in the room, but it has to speak to the client. And to me, that's the most important part. So very often I have some of my work, and not all of it, where I call them remixes. I think of a 80s cassette player, and I call them remixes. I'll change the color, but I will always tell the client, send me, screenshots of the colors you're thinking of. And if it works for my eye, then I'll do it. But if it doesn't, I'm going to tell you this isn't working for me. And so a perfect example is my works over at the Designer's Lounge. They really were working with some deep purples and mustard yellows. And so 2 of the images I remixed for them. And it worked. But if it didn't, I'd be like, well, we can't do this piece.
We have to do something
Yeah,
else.
completely. Yeah. And then the other commission I do, and it's not as often, but it does happen, is when it's usually a location where somebody is like, I had a client who moved to Connecticut, and they moved from Brooklyn, and they really wanted to stay connected to Brooklyn. And they said, will you shoot something in Brooklyn? And so I love those types of commissions, because for me, it's not just that shot. It's an area that I may not know of. And when I typically photograph, I do a lot of street art. I wander, and I don't have any sort of agenda, and I just wander the area and shoot what I want. So I love those types of commissions. But then this particular one for Brooklyn, I took an image of their subway stop that they went to. And then I worked with that and brought it in with some of the street art that I had taken in the area and kind of made it all work together. Those types of commissions don't happen as often as the color for me.
Is it still meaningful? You know, this is going to be a terrible example, but if someone was like, can you go to this address and shoot my childhood home? Like, is it that specific, or is it more like,
Yeah, I don't
feeling
think I
of
would
this-
take
yeah,
that on
is it more
because
like
it needs
feeling
to
of the
speak to
sense of
me.
place?
Yeah, so I don't think, I tell people all the time, like, I don't take pictures of people
Right.
ever. Like, that's just not my thing. I don't, that's, I wouldn't take something like
Yeah.
that on because, you know, it really needs to speak to me as the artist.
What would what would the right brief be then? I guess, like, how would you like kick that back and say, this is what we could do to capture the,
So it, like using your example of someone's house, for me,
Yeah.
I'd say, let's go take a look at the house. Maybe there's something in the house. You know, my eyes sees things very differently than, you know, just a house. And I might, you know, hone in on a wall that's got like a paint chip or a crack in it that like I think is beautiful. That may not speak to them. And so,
right?
you know, it's that conversation of back and forth. But again, it's rare
Yeah.
that somebody says, "Will you shoot this?"
Yeah.
You know, it's this area. We love to go to Nantucket. You know, do you ever shoot there? You know, or you know, I have a client that I'm working on a commercial job that I'm working on right now in they're based in Boston, but all of the board members have houses in Nantucket. And so they, in all of their meeting rooms, they wanted work from Nantucket, which I've shot there quite a bit, but there were more meeting rooms than I had. And so I said, I'll go to Nantucket and shoot different beaches for you because they were naming them after all the beaches in Nantucket. So, but again, it's my eye shooting it. It's not something specific.
That's really great. Is for clients, is the idea of commissioning scary or appealing? Like, is that attractive or repelling to more people, or how does that?
I'll say from a retail perspective, because we have a lot of different art hanging in the store, and people come in, and which is actually a nice way too. It's a mini fair in a way that they can come in and say, I love this, I love that. But and that's where the scale is really important as well. But to make sure, a lot of people, we have very tall ceilings, so everything looks maybe a little more diminutive in the store than it actually would look in their home.
Right.
And that's where I think a lot of times people get in trouble too. So working with them with that, but they'll see it and say, I love this, but it's really the wrong size, or I need it in the other orientation, or I need another color. At that point, that's when we call in Romanoff and the artist and work with them to do that. But people do get nervous because you actually are putting your name on the line that you're going to purchase this for the most part. So, and there is a price increase with that as well. So most people are understanding about that, but some people will hear the word commission and flee.
Has to be a special wall.
Yeah.
What are for all of you, what are the kind of the common issues you see in relation to kind of the partnership of art and interiors? Where do people make mistakes in the process of securing a piece for a room?
Scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scale. Yeah.
Where is it too small, too big?
small.
Where do people miss?
Too small.
Go
Yeah.
big.
And also
Real big.
placement
All
and
big.
where they're hanging it on the wall very often.
Yeah.
They too high, too low.
And I think a lot of times they do look at the price and they say, okay, that'll be fine. That's what, and they, no, I do. I think they're like, well, I can get away with get away with you know, and you're like, no, you really need to go. And in the grand scheme of your relationship with that room in your home, it's minuscule, but you need to kind of push them to make sure they're not buying the art too small.
I have 8-foot ceilings and 48 by 60s everywhere.
I made her husband drop a painting last night 2 inches.
Beyond scale, working with designers, working with clients, what is the one thing you wish the people living with these works kind of knew about your process or your work that, you know, to improve your relationship, to improve the final result?
I think that people need to realize that art is an investment, and this is something that will grow with you, and it'll grow with your family. And these are the things, like, I love to think about the collection I'm building, and I love to think about what my 3 girls are going to fight over when I'm gone. Like, they're not going to fight over the sectional. They're going to fight over this art. These are the things, this is your legacy. This is what you're going to leave behind. And this is what, like, your great grandchild is going to be like, that was a piece of my grandmother, and it's her personality and it's her eye. And it's like the things that you leave behind.
To add to that, growing with it, I had a designer who posted about me and recommended me for nursery artwork. And what I love about that is my work really can grow with a child. And there's a piece over there that she actually had specified. It's a butterfly, and it's a beautiful butterfly that would look great in a nursery, but will grow with a little girl into her teenage room. And then when she moves to an apartment one day, she could take it with her. So growing is definitely a big part of it.
We've done that too with a couple of clients where we actually have the artist sign the back of the piece to the child, right? And that's a gift. that's given to them either when they're born or as a certain milestone in their life, we're buying them a piece of art. So I have something that my daughter, we bought a long time ago, and it's signed on the back. And my husband actually bought a piece of art for me when my first child was born, and was signed to him. So I'm going to enjoy it for a very long time, I hope to, but someday hopefully it'll be in his home.
And that's how art can also capture a moment in time. An example is when it was like during COVID, during the pandemic, and my husband and I celebrated our 10-year anniversary, and he said, "What would you like as a gift? We can't go on a trip." And I said, "Well, a big painting, of course." And what we commissioned was a portrait of my 3 girls as their stair steps in our backyard when we couldn't go anywhere else playing. And, you know, we have the 3 pastel portraits when they're all 5, but this was a real moment in time when they're all the different ages. And I think that that's something that art can do.
That's amazing. What is, one of the things when we were like preparing for this talk, I think I had everyone think about a moment where it was easy to pair a piece with an interior and a moment when it was hard. And I was wondering if you could each sort of tell me your story of where you landed for like the rooms you were thinking about.
I can tell my story about one that was hard. So this past summer, Charlotte Lucas designed the Southern Living Idea House, and it's in Oriental, North Carolina. I'm from East North Carolina, which, if anybody knows, it's not a glamorous place. And she commissioned one of my landscapes to go on a wall. And these are very rural landscapes. I mean, they have crop lines and everything. And I was so proud to have a little piece of my hometown in this house because it's in, so close to where I grew up. And she sent me the mood board, and it's, of course, stunning, and, her quirky, cool style, on this chinoiserie wallpaper, like so elegant. And I had to figure out, how am I going to make this rural landscape look good and on this beautiful, elegant chinoiserie wallpaper? And I think, knowing Charlotte, she's got that quirky, bold, cool style. It also had to be a little mismatched. Like, I couldn't just take every color from the wallpaper and use it in the painting, because that would look totally off with everything else in her house. But I think in the end, it really turned out great. And when I saw it on the wallpaper, I was like, bingo.
I'll take the easy way. I had a client who needed a piece in her kitchen. It was open shelving, no upper cabinets, a lot of shelves, but she had this one wall that where her coffee kind of bar was. And I had just shot in Nantucket a bunch of sand and foam images, and I hadn't named it yet. And this client came to me, and very kind of neutral palette, which was perfect for these photos. And so it actually gave me one of my favorite things to do is title my pieces. It's kind of like I've always said I wish that I could work for OPI and name the nail polishes. I love naming my pieces. And so I had just shot this, and I said, I have the perfect shot for you. It was perfect for that area. And I titled it Clouds in My Coffee. And it kind of resembles coffee a little bit because you've got the kind of latte color of the sand and the white foam on top that represented kind of foam in a latte. So it was just a no-brainer for me. It was super easy.
Do you have like a
Let's
good
see.
story?
I guess one of the hard, sometimes working just with production, it's not right. And one of the things that, Carol and I at Romanoff have faced is having to put something and install it. And these are more corporate installations as opposed to residential, where the client will not notice that it's not right 100%, but we do. And we leave there going, okay, we've got to fix that. That has to be redone. That's how, and we can't sleep at night. And really taking the time to go back and reproduce and having to say to the client, look, you know what? We're not happy with this. We installed it. It's up, but it's going to come down and it's get switched out. And so we do that. So just so you know, Roman, we always make sure everything is, is right. But we do that for the artist, because the artists, we were representing them. I have super high standards, so I bring that with me, with anyone. But, having to go in and having to actually, say it's not right, we're going to fix it, But that's one thing that it's kind of hard, you know, because you definitely don't want to leave, but then sometimes you can't leave the blank wall either. So you gotta have the placeholder there.
We have a client that they had a very long hallway, and if I'm not mistaken, the husband wanted a mirror at the end of it,
Yeah.
and the wife wanted artwork.
Right.
And Romanoff had reached out to me, and I said, let's print it on a mirror because I can print my photography on a mirror. It's typically the whatever is white will become the mirror. And we did it.
Yeah,
and
it was our plan and
it was
graphics,
one of those perfect, storms where the husband got what he wanted and the wife got what she wanted.
And they liked it so much they're buying it for their next
Yeah,
house. In a different
So,
color.
well, in that, I've walked that house.
Yeah.
We cannot find a place for this mirror. I've like gone through and I'm like, we can
getting
put it in
something
here,
else
we can do
instead.
here, we can do there. So we found something else of Allison's that we were like, okay, this
That was
will.
how it started. Yeah.
But as soon as I walked in, she's like, can we find a place for this mirror?
Yeah, she loves it. She loves
It's
it.
like her signature.
I guess one of our easiest was it was started as a hard project because it was a COVID design. So a client bought a New York City apartment and they closed on it the Thursday before New York City shut down. And then we waited months for them to be able to get in there. But in the meantime, she said, here's the floor plan, just go. When I get in the apartment, I need everything ready to go. So I spent most of my COVID time with the store shut working on designing this apartment and doing the install. She said, but don't worry, I have all the art. So we finally got everything in, brought it all in, and there was this one spectacular wall that was absolutely blank. So I called up to Carol and I was like, this is an emergency because she, everything's here except we need a piece of art. And we had been earlier on a gallery visit to see an artist. And we both said immediately, I showed her a couple of pictures of what the room was looking like. And we both were like, that Central Park photo we saw of Claudia's. And we called someone, we had it there within a day and we hung it on the wall. And the client walked in with her husband that night to see the finished apartment. And it was absolutely perfect. So
How often does that happen?
almost never. But thankfully for that one,
You always have to have a good delivery guy
Yeah,
in
yeah,
your back pocket. Man with the truck.
We're going to end on that note. The 1 in a million, like it all worked out. I think we're all going to be here for a little bit right after the talk. I think we can take questions that way, but thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being here. Enjoy your afternoon at market.
thank you, Caitlin. Thank you,
Thank you
Universal.
all so much.
Thank you.